Ooh, welcome to the Ringer NFL show. I am your host, Sheil Kapadia. Today we are looking at the Week 15 slate. We have zeroed in on 3 games. Bills at Patriots, big matchup in the AFC East. Lions at Rams. Lions trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. And then Packers at Broncos. 2 fan bases who feel like their team can win the Super Bowl. So what's going to happen in those games? We are predicting the headlines and the storylines that you are going to read about next week. Our guest today is Diante Lee, my friend from The Ringer. Let's take a break. We come back. We predict Week 15 headlines for those games with Diante. This episode of The Ringer NFL show is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a C captain? Sure, they're both captains, but who is going to run your offense? You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team, so don't settle for just any insurance. When it comes to getting the help you need, State Farm is the real deal. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. All right, we are back here on the Ringer NFL show with Diante Lee. By the way, the new head coach of Bonita Vista High School, which is now, Diante, the official high school football team of the Ringer NFL show. Congratulations, my friend.
I'm so glad you told me that because I'm going to have some fundraisers ready for you guys and the listeners. You know, we'll have swag prepared. I'll make sure that all that stuff gets out. And first order of business is going to be getting the positivity money and dropping it right in the middle of the facility.
There you go. Yeah, if you need me to, do any research here in Philadelphia and get that shipped out to the San Diego area, I'd be happy to. But of course, we are all very happy for our friend Diante to get that gig, and we'll be rooting them on next fall. All right, Diante, let's get to these games. We're doing a little predict the headlines for Week 15. First matchup we got here is Bills-Patriots. Bills go to New England. New England is a 1.5 point underdog here. What do you have for your predicted headline for this game?
I have Josh Allen remains king in the AFC East. I think
we are on the same page here. Okay, because I have Josh Allen back in MVP conversation after Bills
about that
win
one as well
at Foxborough. Okay, make the case. Why do you think this is a nice spot for Buffalo?
So the first thing I really wanted to do was go back and rewatch the game in Week 5, the Sunday Night Football game between the Patriots and Bills, to kind of get a better understanding of how Buffalo lost that game. And it's so easy to forget with distance between now and then that the game was pretty close. And it ended up taking a really impressive Drake May drive at the end to be able to take the lead and control the game and put it away, right? But I think that was a very messy game by Buffalo standards. You had a bunch of fumbles in there. It was kind of uncharacteristic in terms of their inability to run the ball early in the game. But I think the biggest thing for them and what I think will be fixed when we get to Sunday is that Josh Allen, I think, is going to come into this game understanding that New England is going to play a bunch of tight coverage. They're going to try to load up the line of scrimmage. And if he's going to beat it, he's going to have to beat this team the same way he beat Denver in the wild card round last year, was you've got to be an extender of plays. You've got to use your legs, scramble a bunch, which he did in that game, just not as effectively. And we've got to see that kind of Josh Allen tour de force, nothing you can do about him, physical specimen type of performance to win this game. And I think that just at his best, that's what we're going to get. And an opportunity like this, where if they beat New England, it is very much within the picture or within the realm of possibility that they still win this division. I expect to see Josh Allen at his absolute apex when we get to this weekend.
Yeah, so here's what's at stake. Patriots are 11-2. The Athletics playoff simulator, they have a 49% chance at the 1 seed and an 89% chance to win the division. But if they lose this game, it opens the door for the Bills, like Diante just said, where the Patriots would be down to 75% to win the division here. So that's what the Bills are kind of going for. Can they make this late surge? And I am very interested in the matchup, but also the narrative, because this can be, like you said, a Josh Allen, hey, you're great, Drake May, but it's not your turn yet, buddy. You know, you're in year 2. I'm still here. I showed last week in that wild game against the Bengals that if I need to just put the team on my back and take off for a 40-yard touchdown, I could do that. We've won the division 5 straight years. And the reason I mentioned the MVP thing is because Allen right now is plus 1,400 to win MVP. And to be clear, I think Drake May has just flat out been better than him this year, if you're just saying who's been the better quarterback. But there's still a month left to play here. And so if they go on a run, we know he's going to have the numbers. And if they somehow win this division, again, it's not the most likely scenario, but there's a chance that they do. I think he's got a chance to kind of get back in this MVP race. So I'm with you on that side of the ball. The first matchup, they had 3 turnovers. Like you said, it was still an 88th percentile game for the Bills based on success rate. So I think they're going to move the ball. Now, on the other side of the ball, if you're a Patriots fan listening to this, you're saying, we're going to move the ball on them too, because we really haven't been stopped any week. And so that's true here. Now, I think what's interesting, Diante, is that it's weakness versus weakness. The only thing that the Patriots can't do is run the football. They can hit you with explosives. Their quarterback's been playing awesome. They can sustain drives. They can scheme it up. And the Bills can't stop the run. So if you're the Patriots, do you come into this game and say, we're not even going to try, that's playing into their hands? Or do you say, hey, if there's a time for us to get this run game right, it's probably going to be this week?
I would lean the latter, right? And I think that if you're New England, knowing that you have an MVP level quarterback on the other side and that there are big stakes in this game, even if we set aside divisional odds and focus only on the 1 seed portion of this, if you want to secure the 1 seed, you need the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to try to get into heavier personnel, establish a run on early downs, and make sure the clock is rolling as often as possible. And like you were laying out, this is probably the most friendly environment to do so, because you know what kind of looks you're going to get from Buffalo up front. They don't change their fronts very much. They don't change their coverage shells very much. They are very much a line it up and let's see if you can beat us type of defense. And this defense was struggling this year before Ed Oliver got hurt, in the first half of the season. And it certainly hasn't gotten any better. Their safeties are probably one of the worst tackling tandems when they are healthy, and they've been banged up at that position as well. Same at linebacker with dealing with injuries and guys being in and out of the lineup. I just have a hard time seeing how Buffalo wins this game unless it's a high-scoring affair, or how New England is able to lose this game if they are able to maintain possession.
This feels like one of those, when we do like the deep dives on playoff games and we're analyzing every matchup, and then it's like, oh, they muffed a punt, or, they fumbled a snap in the red zone, or, I could see it coming down to one weird thing, because I do think they're pretty evenly matched teams, especially offensively. I just don't see either side, either defense stopping the other offense. I am interested in the Patriots corners against the Bills wide receivers. Like, the Patriots have more talented corners than the Bills wide receivers. And the Patriots defense hasn't really been tested this year. If you look at all the stats, you're like, oh, they're pretty good. And then you look at the quarterbacks they faced and you're like, do I really trust it? So that's another thing I have my eye on, because there have still been these stretches this year where the Bills are on offense and you go, do they have it? Do they have enough at wide receiver? I know we've talked about that before after some of these losses. Do they have enough at wide receiver? And then you look up and guess what team's number one in EPA per drive after 14 weeks still? Is the Buffalo Bills. So they're making it work somehow with the run game, with Josh Allen, and with the offensive line. So that's going to be a fun game. Can't wait for that one. Bills, Patriots. All right. Game number 2. The Detroit Lions go to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Rams are 5.5-point favorites. I'll just set it up for you here, Diante. Rams are tied for first place with the Seahawks at 10-3. They've got a great chance to get that 1 seed. The Lions, meanwhile, are kind of fighting for their playoff lives. I always forget it until I look at the standings and I go, well, if the season ended today, doesn't matter that they're 8-5. They would be the 8 seed and out of the playoffs. So it means more to them in the big picture. What do you think happens in this game?
My headline is Matthew Stafford, your 2025 NFL MVP. I think this is the game where he really cements the case that it's his award to lose. And I think that a lot of this is just kind of set up by the circumstances of what he's going to be facing in Detroit's defense, right? I hate leading with injury news anytime we talk about football, right? I want to talk about the players that are actually going to be on the field. But I think if you're Detroit, you look at your safety room, no Kirby Joseph. You got Brian Branch that's had this Achilles injury. You're going to be down. That went under
the radar, I feel like, Diante.
Very
maybe
much
because it was a Thursday night game, but like
very much so.
I was, I'm like, oh yeah, they lost Brian Branch, like one of their best players to an Achilles injury. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
So you're down now to safeties 3 and 4, which I think might be like Avonte Maddox now playing one of the safety spots. And you're dealing with a Rams team that loves to move its receivers around, that's going to give you a bunch of formational diversity and try to force you to have to play downhill to fit the run so they can set up play action passes. This is like Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay's dream scenario, is a team that's going to be very concerned about what's happening underneath and opening up those intermediate throws over a linebacker's head and in front of the middle of field safety. And the Lions love playing those single high coverages. So I went and I looked at the data. Matthew Stafford this year, 97th percentile in EPA per drop back against both cover 3 and cover 1, 97th percentile success rate against cover 3, 81st percentile against cover 1. So again, if we're just laying it out, right, what we've known this season of how great Matthew Stafford has been at his best, what we've seen in terms of the volatility of Detroit's defense, not schematically, but just because guys have been banged up and they really haven't had a reliable 11-man unit on a week-by-week basis, this is just a bad matchup right now for, I think, a pretty dinged up Lions defense.
Yeah, the Rams offense is a bad matchup for most defenses, but
Yeah.
I'm with you. If we had the Lions at full strength here, they've played well at times this season. Like I don't think they're underachieving their talent or anything like that. I know we've talked about Kelvin Shepherd before. I mean, they're 12th in EPA per drive, 6th in success rate. I think that's pretty good for the
Very
talent
good.
they have and the injuries they've
Especially
had.
for a first-time coordinator in Kelvin Shepherd.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have the change there, but the Rams offense does everything well. I mean, rushing, passing, explosive plays, long drives, problem solving. Let's say the Lions come out and they just, hey, we creative game plan this week. We're doing something totally different. Like McVay and it might take them one possession and then they're going to, all right, we're going to adjust to that in the next possession here. So I just think it's a really, really tough matchup for the Lions defense against that Rams offense. So I look to the other side of the ball. I think if you're a Lions fan, and you say, hey, what's our avenue for winning this? I don't want to say a perfect offensive game, but you need to be near perfect, I feel like, offensively. And I think you have a chance. I mean, they looked great in that game against the Cowboys last week. The Rams, corners, I'm still not 100% sold on. Jahmyr Gibbs is a 50-yard touchdown anytime he touches the ball, a threat to do that. So that's really what I think the Lions' avenue is here. Like it almost, I don't want to say shootout because maybe you're sustaining long drives and the final score, but I think it's one of those where we're coming on and saying, all right, the EPA per drive, or say it's really high. They were just efficient over and over and over again and didn't have that back-breaking turnover and maybe stole the game in the fourth quarter.
I think it's a possibility. I do think to the point of headlines, we could be walking away from this from Detroit's perspective saying, wow, we really miss Ben Johnson now. This will be the game where I think you need your, wonderkin offensive coordinator to be in the building, to be dialing up enough of a run game, I think, to keep Los Angeles's front four at bay. Because when you just look at the lineup of Jared Verse, Byron Young, and Kobe Turner, and you've got these interior linemen, that's a rookie, right, and Tate Radledge. You've got a backup in Coyote Awashika, right? These are guys that have not proven very much. Graham Glasnow has just not been nearly as good as he's been at the peaks of his career. I think this season for Detroit, it's going to be a struggle to me to see how they're able to reliably run the ball between the tackles. And what we've seen this season is that the only times we really get to see them pop those big runs is the crazy athletic feats of Jahmyr Gibbs, which I don't want to rule out, right? It's entirely possible that they give him the ball on a toss or some outside zone and this guy goes for 75 yards. That is within the realm of possibility. But just from a down-to-down basis, you're probably not going to have access to the kind of success in the run game that you typically would. And then that, to me, sets up the nightmare scenario of now we are asking our quarterback, Jared Goff, to have a perfect game without guys like Sam Laporta, in the middle of the field to get the ball out quickly to her to stress these safeties. And now Chris Shula, as a Rams defensive coordinator, can say, hey, as long as I've got help over Jamison Williams and he's not just burning up and down the field, we feel like we can corral this offense, right? And I think that we saw that when the Packers played them on Thursday night last week. So I'm fascinated to see what they come up with, what Dan Campbell is able to dial up in terms of being the play caller. But if I'm just, again, lining this up, scheme versus scheme, personnel versus personnel, this to me is where I think you're really going to start to see some of the cracks in Detroit's foundation, at least for 2025.
It's a great point on the Lions run game because you watch it and you see Gibbs and you're like, oh, their run game's incredible. And at times it is. But then you look at it and they're 22nd in rushing success rate. So in between those amazing, like you said, those amazing Jahmyr Gibbs runs, there's a lot of like, I don't know. Now it looked good last week against the Dallas. Did they figure something out?
Right.
Is that going up against, a different defense? I don't know, but you're right with Ben Johnson, because it's hard not to look at it where you say the Lions rushing efficiency has taken a significant step back, and look at what he's doing with DeAndre Swift and Manungai, and that, they're a top 5 rushing unit. So he has a special skill. There's no doubt about it. We can say that in terms of designing a run game and giving his guys edges with leverage and angles and all those things that matter when it comes to running the football. So I'm with you. I've got, mine was not Stafford related, but I had Crownham. Rams look like the NFL's best team with decisive victory against Detroit. So I think we both like the Rams. I will say, I don't like I do still kind of trust the Lions infrastructure, and I still like Campbell, and they got their backs against the wall. So I don't say it with full confidence what I think is going to happen. Just matchup wise, injury wise with the Lions defense, I was like, I don't want to bet against that Rams offense with the way they've been playing this season. All right, let's take a break. We come back. We got one more game to get to. Super Bowl preview? Maybe. Some might say Packers at Broncos. We'll talk about that when we come back. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. The holidays move quickly like a blitz to save the game. That's where Prime comes in with fast, free delivery. My kids put together these presentations for what they want for Christmas, and they put the Amazon Prime link right in there. I just have to click. They know I'm not paying for shipping. I'm going to that Prime link, can order it. It shows up at the door. It's in a box, so it doesn't give anything away. I sneak it upstairs, and there you go. They will see it on Christmas morning. Prime's fast shipping is always there for you during the holidays, especially when it's last minute and just can't wait. Need some holiday magic? It's on Prime. Head to Amazon.com/Prime to shop now. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. Diante, this is I would love to know how often this has happened where the 1 seed in a conference in week 15 is a home underdog. It cannot have happened often in recent NFL history. At least I don't think so. Maybe it has, and I don't know. But the Broncos are 2.5-point underdogs at home against Green Bay. We talked about both these teams a little bit yesterday with Dan Hansis on the show, but now they're playing each other and we got the matchup. What do you think for this game?
My headline here is Green Bay wins late, shows championship medal. And I think that comes back to what you were talking about in terms of this potentially being a Super Bowl matchup that we'd see come next February. I think that if you're Green Bay, you're going throughout this week in practice. And if you're Matt LaFleur, you're talking with Brian Gutekunst and saying, this is the kind of game that we paid Jordan Love the money we paid him and why we gave up 2 first-round picks to go get Micah Parsons. This is a superstars win you these types of games, types of moments for them. And I think that this is going to be a third down football game. Obviously, we have seen over the last couple of weeks, even when Denver is playing kind of ugly on offense in terms of the passing game, they're able to maintain possession. They can hold on to the ball. I think their running game is really kind of starting to find its stride in a way that we didn't see last season, in a way that's been kind of hot and cold at certain points against top defenses this year. But I think that ultimately you're going to see Green Bay sell out to get them to third down. And then it's going to be Micah Parsons trying to get quick pressures on Bo Nix, right? And if there's one thing I will give Bo Nix credit for and this offensive system credit for, is that when they get to third down, they understand what kind of quarterback they're dealing with. They're not asking him to push the ball deep downfield. They're not asking him to hold the ball for a very long time. And it's going to be on Parsons to make that not matter, right? Whether you're moving him onto the interior, they've had these great cheetah packages where they put him over a center or put him over a guard and work these stunts and twists. This could be a great week for that. Or if you just line him up on the edge and ask him to go win mano-a-mano football, I think that that's where the game is going to be won if you're Green Bay. And then on the flip side, and I'm sure you'll get to this as well, this is going to be a Nick Bonito versus Jordan Love game. Another quarterback that's hard to sack. I think he's a little bit of an inverse from Nick's in the terms of he's going to hold the ball on third down. He's going to try to push it downfield on third down. And Nick Bonito is one of the quickest get-off times in the league and is right up there with Micah Parsons in terms of the sack and quarterback knockdown rate. That, I think, will be the story of the football game. And whichever team ends up winning that is going to be the one that I think feels like they've got the necessary pieces in terms of superstar impact to go out and win a championship this year.
All right, I'm going to surprise you, Diante. We've talked about this before. I've got the analytical part of the brain and then just zoom out, remember before you even knew what EPA was or what cover 3 was. And just my headline is going to be Broncos in pole position for 1 seed after home upset against Green Bay. On paper, I think the Packers are the better team. I think the Packers have a better chance to win the Super Bowl. I said that on yesterday's show. This feels like a Sean Payton voodoo spot to me, where it's just like the Broncos defense, one thing, they've got a schematic advantage or a nice matchup. They're the best in the NFL at limiting explosive pass plays. So they got that going for them, and their run defense is good. How do the Packers win a lot of weeks? Producing explosive pass plays and their run game. They might not have Josh Jacobs here. So I think the Broncos defense is going to show up. I would be very surprised if their defense didn't keep them into this game late. And then offensively, it's the Knicks, the Bo Nix superpower is I'm not going to give the game away. Now, whether you consider that a superpower or not, just that is the defining trait of Bo Nix these 2 years with Sean Payton. He's got the 6th lowest turnover-worthy play percentage. And like you said, he has the lowest pressure to sack rate in the NFL. Jordan Love is second. So they're both terrific at this. So I think Bo Nix will go into this game, and it's not going to be like, I have to go win this game. I have to just avoid those negative plays, keep it close in the fourth quarter, and we can steal it late. Maybe Sean Payton schemes up an explosive or two. So I don't know. I kept looking at it and I go, I know what I've said all year long, and I've been bullish on the Packers for most of the year, and I've been fading the Broncos for most of the year. But then I said, Denver at home, Denver an underdog. I'm looking at the matchup, and I think that the Broncos have a real chance. And every year there has to be a team that annoys people like me and you, where you're just like, wait a minute, I don't know if I believe it. This is going to regress. No, they can't get away with this. And then you look up in week 17 and it hasn't happened yet. So maybe the Broncos are just that team.
I mean, it's entirely possible, right? I've had a very complicated relationship with watching the Broncos all season.
Me too.
I feel right now, if you're asking me, right, if you're asking me to bet a steak dinner on who's going to win this conference, it's hard for me not to pick Denver because they have maybe outside of Houston's defense, the most reliable single unit in this conference with their defense. And I do think that they're going to have a major impact on this game. The thing that I'm fascinated about is how Vance Joseph deploys Patrick Surtain with their matchups on the outside, right? Is this going to be a Surtain on Christian Watson? Because Christian Watson has been white hot in terms of generating explosive plays over the last few weeks since he's been healthy.
The greatest ACL recovery, this side of Adrian Peterson, I would say.
No kidding.
In NFL history.
The guy dropped back on the field and immediately looked like the fastest, biggest, strongest, highest leaper in the league almost immediately, right? So I'm fascinated to see if you do get that Surtain versus Watson matchup. And I think that just based on the way that Surtain plays, for as good as Watson is, it's kind of advantage Surtain because he always handles these very vertical, big-bodied receivers really well because of his length. But what we've seen from Jordan Love is when Watson isn't there, he's been able to pin the ball on the shoulder pads of Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs, right? We need to see that version of Jordan Love. And this will be the perfect time for a Packers offense that is frustrated you and I, that has been hot and cold at points. This was around the time of season last year when they're playing against the Vikings and you need to see them take that last step against a team that's going to give you a lot of pressure and play a lot of tight coverage. I need to see Jordan Love in that moment say, put it all on my shoulders. I'll extend plays if I need to. I'll mitigate pressure if I need to. And it's not going to cost me the explosive offense, even if I can't get the ball to my number one receiver. That's the game within the game for me. I'm leaning Jordan Love figuring it out. Maybe I'm biased a lot by what we saw against the Lions and what we saw, over the last couple of weeks when he has been playing at his best. But I wouldn't be surprised on the other side if this is a Jordan Love 1 touchdown, 1 interception game because Patrick Surtain had, the game of a lifetime on the back end.
Well, it was 3-4 weeks ago they had that game against the Eagles. And it's like, do the Packers have enough? You're watching that go, I bought the whole, hey, we got a bunch of different receivers thing, but then they lose Tucker Kraft. And it felt like, man, this is kind of an inflection point for this franchise, for this era of Packers football. And since then, they've responded in a big way. Love's playing his best football of the year. You mentioned it. Watson has kind of come in, and I know him and Tucker Kraft are completely different players, but he's kind of picked up the slack for the offense. Wicks has had some incredible high leverage catches for them, and Love's playing good football, and LaFleur's figured it out. So yeah, you feel good about where the Packers are right now. 9-3-1, have won 4 in a row, currently the 2 seed. I think this will be a fun matchup. Will come down to the fourth quarter. And one of these fan bases is going to be hyped after that. Because, I mean, whichever team wins this game, they're going to be convinced they're going to the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl. If they're not already there, but especially after a win like this in December. So very much looking forward to this matchup. All right, his name is Diante Lee. Diante, thank you for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, Sheil.
All right, I'll be right back with the Ringer 107. All right, today's Ringer 107 is brought to you by FanDuel. Last week did not go great. I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about Pete Carroll kicking that field goal at the end and costing me a win. You know what we're doing? We are looking ahead to week 15. Here are the picks. I'm leading with the Chiefs -5.5 against the Chargers. Chiefs at home. Justin Herbert has this hand injury. He was pressured on 70% of his dropbacks last week. The Chargers have injuries at offensive tackle. And this is the week where it felt like everyone decided they were done with the Chiefs. I continue to believe, I know you're sick of hearing it, I continue to believe they're not as bad as their record says. I think they get a little bit of hope here and deliver a convincing win against the Chargers. So Chiefs -5.5. That's the first pick. Second pick, I can't believe I'm doing this one. Eagles -11.5 at home against the Raiders. The Eagles offense stinks. I understand. But you know what? Their defense is excellent. It was excellent last week against the Chargers. And now they go from Justin Herbert to Kenny Pickett and probably the most lifeless team in the NFL in the Las Vegas Raiders. So I know it's going to probably be low scoring, but I just have to bet against the Raiders again after the way they did me dirty last week with that field goal. This is out of principle. I don't think the Raiders are going to score more than 10 points, 23-10, something like that. Eagles, they cover the 11.5. All right, next game, Cowboys -6.5 against the Vikings. I know JJ McCarthy played well last week. I need to see more before I believe he can give them actual competent quarterback play. I also know the Vikings defense is good, but you know what? Dak Prescott in that passing game, it is just tough to deal with every single week. You might stop them here and there, but eventually they're going to produce some explosive plays. So I like the Cowboys at home in that game -6.5. Next game, one we just talked about, Denver Broncos +2.5 against the Packers. I just like the matchup for Denver. I like the spot. They're at home. I think they can make this an ugly game and maybe steal it in the fourth quarter. And finally, Browns +7.5 at Chicago. Have you seen the weather forecast for this game? It is 11 degrees with a real feel of 1, potentially one of the coldest games in Bears franchise history from what I was looking at earlier today. So I am just counting on neither team being able to pass the football and the Browns defense still being good enough to keep this game close. All right, today's Ringer 107 was brought to you by FanDuel, odds subject to change. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thank you to Diante Lee. Thank you to Christopher Sutton for producing, Kiera Gibbons on social, and additional production supervision by Conor Nevins and Arjuna Ramgopowell. I'll be back Monday morning breaking down the biggest Week 15 storylines. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next time on the Ringer NFL Show. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.